We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, it has been a minute. Thank you for sticking with me. Just a lot going on, and one of the things I mention this all the time, but this is a kind of a one-man band effort, and so I kind of took a couple weeks off doing live streams just to get caught up on cutting up my old streams and turning them into video segments. And there's so much stuff going on, and it's really hard to cover YouTubers and independent media people doing a fantastic job. So that's another thing, is it takes me a minute to curate stuff that I think is worth talking about that hasn't already been run into the ground by the 5 other indie media shows that I watch on a regular basis. So we got a lot to talk about. Got a lot of treats in store for you today. But I hope you're doing well as end stage capitalism kind of continues to roll along with this bridge accident we just had with this boat. This is insanely suspicious. It's very reminiscent to the Palestine, Ohio thing. Of course, it's suspicious in the sense that it's probably just lack of attention to detail, or someone's subverting the rules, doing shortcuts for profit. It's always how it works. I don't think it's some grand conspiracy or anything like that. I just think it's, like I said, late stage capitalism. And then we have the media trying desperately to sell Joe Biden. And this is just, this is going to be our first little foray into the weeds here. But just watching the media at large trying to fearmonger around Trump and sell Joe Biden as like a viable option for president has been absolutely hilarious. I used to work in marketing, so I see all these marketing tactics they're using, like the fear thing and the way that they kind of go like, oh, well, it's ageist, or a lot of people were pointing out that Joe Biden had cognitive decline issues a couple years ago, and they tried to say it was a stutter, that he has a stutter. And my response to that was, hey, find some footage for me of Joe Biden stuttering 20 years ago. You can't find it because it doesn't exist. And the guy's been in Washington for 50 years. So there's plenty of footage of him all over the place that, you'd be able to find footage of him stuttering, back in the day. But anyway, it, I know it. It's a fucking joke. So let's get on. Let's get going on this here. The title card for this week's show is a kind of a mashup of Bernie and Joe and cancel culture. And man, I've got some really good cancel culture footage. And I mean, that segment's going to be called The Death of Cancel Culture, because it's dead at this point. And I have receipts for that claim. But let's get started with the media and the current presidential race, which is pretty much, the nominees are pretty much shored up at this point. It's going to be Biden and Trump, despite people like RFK and Marianne Williamson's best efforts. I didn't even have to cover Marianne Williamson because, that whole thing just kind of nosedived and smashed into the ground before I even really had a chance to comment on it. But I think Nick from RBN pretty much handily dismantled her right out the gate. And Nick and Keaton and Russ and Jimmy and all the OG Bernie heads, as we'll call them, called that thing right out the gate. Like, hey, like we're not going to donate all of our money to you because we know that at the end of the day, you're just going to tell us to vote for Joe Biden. So it got me thinking. All these attempts by the media to kind of sell Joe Biden. It got me thinking. They said the exact opposite things when Bernie was running. Age was, of course, a huge issue when it was Bernie versus Hillary. Hillary was 69 and he was 75 at the time, a 6-year age difference. But you better believe that they made Bernie's age a big deal. And I'm not the best at digging up video clips. I'm not Matt Orfala. I'm sure he probably has a supercut. I should have looked of the press doing this, but let's start this out with, I want to show you what the press was saying about Bernie Sanders back in, this one is from the first presidential race back in, what's this one, 2015? This is from the 2016 era Bernie presidential race, right? Bernie Sanders would be the oldest president in U.S. history. Well, he's been beat for that record now by Joe Biden. But check this out. If Bernie Sanders succeeds in his bid for the presidency, which he confirmed on Wednesday, he will be the oldest person ever to be elected president. The junior senator from Vermont will turn 75 2 months before the 2016 general election. If he were to win the nomination, one leading online gambling site puts the odds of that happening 50-1. Yeah, so they're already so this is from Chris Wilson in April of 2015. So they were already going hard on Bernie here. So then they have this chart about the age of electability, right? Let me switch this for you so you can see it. So this kind of, look, we have data to show that, see how much more older Bernie Sanders was than even Ronald Reagan. And then they go down to Clinton, who has never been a president, but they're just kind of, this was the way that the press was selling Clinton back in that day. But they go all the way down. And they go deeper. But George Washington was that young when he was president. Wow, he was in his 50s. Oh, he's 60. Okay. Well, anyway, this is the type of stuff that the press was saying about Bernie Sanders back in 2015. So let's check what Time Magazine is saying today about Joe Biden. Oh, if you guessed that they're saying the opposite, you guessed right. Ageist attacks against President Biden reinforce outdated stereotypes and hurt younger people too. So they're kind of almost attacking themselves. This one's from what is it, May 10th, 2021. So they're basically attacking themselves 6 years earlier. When President Joe Biden tripped on the stairs up to Air Force One on March 19th, the incident immediately touched off a flurry of mockery. So this isn't even from the current cycle. This is from 2021. Fox News host Sean Hannity declared the president to be frail. He didn't know where the hell he was, former President Donald Trump said in an interview with Lara Trump on Saturday Night Live. No stranger to easy jokes about aging presidents, poked fun at both the fall and March 25th conference. A reporter asked Biden if he planned to run for a second term, a question, quipped SNL's Michael Shea, which was probably the nicest way to ask him if he plans on being alive in 3 years. So, the media at large has been going pretty hard on Biden about the age thing, but not hard enough. I mean, and when you see stuff like this, let's watch this really quick. This is Biden a couple months ago at talking about, this is just insane. This is just talking about a dead French leader.
I was elected, I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. I was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from France looked at me.
He doesn't even know what country he's from. And he's not alive.
Said, why, how long are you back for?
So
And I looked at him.
The courtesy laughs from the audience. So you never see Trump in that state. I'm sorry. I mean, you can dislike Trump all you want, but Biden is clearly out of it. So let's just keep looking through these Time Magazine articles from a couple years ago. Here's another one. The weaponization of Biden's age. So this one is a newer one. This one's from September 27th of last year by Mauro Gillen. The 2024 presidential election picks up steam as the 2024 presidential election. Let me start over. As the 2024 presidential election picks up steam, voters, particularly those from the Democratic Party, seem to be overly concerned about age and the cognitive and physical decline that comes with it. Perhaps it's inevitable given how rampant ageism is in America. According to a 2018 survey conducted by the American Associated of Retired Persons, 1 in 4 American workers aged 45 and above have experienced negative comments related to their age. Now, look, I'm 45 and above. And to equate ageism to racism is stupid to begin with, because there is, as you age, first of all, you get a lot wiser, you get a lot smarter, but you do. A lot of people, I mean, I can't speak for myself because I take good care of myself, but a lot of people lose their edge as they get older. Maybe not even 45, maybe like 60 is a better age to claim, but this is just the reality. And what is so funny to me is you see the tone of these articles, defending Biden's age in contrast with what they did to Bernie Sanders. And I've got more of this stuff, so let's keep going. So here's Howard Dean. Remember Howard Dean? I don't know if you remember him, but if you do remember Howard Dean, this is what you remember. And again, that's another example of the media. Like, Howard Dean was run out of the Democratic primary for getting excited at a campaign rally, because at that time he was in the same vein as a Bernie Sanders. And Dean, to his credit, was one of the first people to actually leverage online fundraising, which, it kind of progressed from there. Obama ended up getting elected with it. Ron Paul leveraged it to massive benefit, and so did Bernie. So this is Howard Dean talking about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders should get old people like Bernie Sanders should get out of politics for 2020, Howard Dean says. He added. So what do you think? Let's see what Howard Dean is saying today. And this one isn't quite as much of a gotcha, but Biden could beat the daylights out of Trump in a push-up contest, former DNC chairman boasts. Who cares? And why are you defending a guy like what? What is Joe Biden's age right now? Because Bernie was 75 when he's 81 years old. Bernie was 75. When's Joe Biden's birthday? November 20th, 1942, age 81 years old. Okay. So Biden's a Sagittarius like myself. Interesting. But look at this. I mean, it's just so evident. These people aren't even hiding how fake and just deferent to power they are. You're like, well, Joe Biden's the leader, so I gotta pretend that he's in shape enough to win. And this is the thing with the Trump stuff, with them coming out now and saying like Trump is just the biggest threat to democracy. He's the most evil, torturous man alive. It doesn't make any sense when they're running Joe Biden. It doesn't make any sense at all. So What do we got? What else do we got here? Bernie Sanders. This is okay. This is my favorite then and now of the media right here, the Chicago Tribune. So let's look at this. Bernie Sanders is too old. Of course he is. Of course he is. What do you got to say about this, Chicago Tribune? In Thursday's Democratic town hall, Anderson Cooper raised an issue about Bernie Sanders that Hillary Clinton, for obvious reasons, has not. His age. The Vermont senator will be 75 this year, which means he would be the oldest person ever to enter the White House. Ronald Reagan, who currently holds the record, was inaugurated his first time at age 69. Young people don't seem to care that Sanders was born before Pearl Harbor, but they should. But they should. Howard Dean, do you have a comment here, Mr. Dean? Took me a minute to find that. But they should. Sanders is, by any sensible standard, Sanders is way past his presidential sell date at 75. Oh my God. I'm surprised a lot that they haven't scrubbed this stuff from the internet yet, because in today's climate, that's usually what happens. So they don't have to be held to account for this kind of ridiculousness. But there it is right there. By any sensible standard, Sanders is way past the presidential sell date. Do you think the Chicago Tribune is saying that about Joe Biden? Or said that about Joe Biden when he got elected at, 3 years ago at 78 or whatever he was, 77? My guess is going to be no, but let's see what we got here. Christine Ledbetter, aging comes with stigma. Let's admire the defiant. That's definitely a little bit of a different take than you had on Bernie Sanders there, Chicago Tribune. But let's see what Christine Ledbetter has to say here. I'm sure it's brilliant. Who do you want to be when you grow old? Increasingly, senior citizens decide to keep working, including the two frontrunners for the 2024 presidential election. Because many Americans consider the candidates too old for the job, age has become part of the national conversation. Both Joe Biden, 81, and Donald Trump, 77, would be the oldest presidents at the end of their terms. Each has addressed his age quite differently this month. In a new presidential campaign ad, Biden states, "Look, I'm not a young guy. That's no secret. But here's the deal. I understand how to get things done for the American people." Well, if you do, you really haven't shown that, other than get wars done for Israel and wars done for Ukraine. And what has Biden gotten done for the American people? Literally nothing. He's just been stewing in his elderly juices, and while the interests who actually run the country, pilot the wheel. So anyway, here's another great one from the Chicago Tribune. And this is a letter to the editor, but this is the kind of stuff they're publishing now that they would never have published in regards to Bernie Sanders. The media's obsession with Joe Biden's age. Yeah, they're so hard on him about it, as you can tell. Regarding President Joe Biden's age, it has become a thing because the media, including the Tribune opinion section, won't stop harping on it. The Republicans have been cagey on the subject, preferring to let their fellow travelers such as Jonah Goldberg or Brett Stevens run point, since their guy, if elected in 2024, would similarly to Biden be the oldest person ever elected to the American presidency. Okay. The idea, it literally has nothing to do with age, because Willie Nelson is 90 years old and he would make a much better president than Joe Biden. Joe Biden is clearly in cognitive decline. I don't know how this got in there, but accelerate the end game. How Barack Obama nudged Bernie Sanders, and there's him and Biden sitting courtside. Anyway, so this ridiculous sales pitch, this like, oh, you got to vote for Biden even though he's barely fucking cognitive, is echoed by everyone. And you can see these people are all reading from the same script. And I mean, the more that time progresses, the more I understand why people despise corporate media and the media so much, because it is just it's like they're infantilizing us. Like, oh, okay, guys, Biden's gonna be fine. It's gonna be good. They speak down to the audience as if we're all stupid asses who can't clearly see with our own eyes what's going on. Like, look at this. This is just to show you. Okay, I'm gonna draw some more contrast here. This is Stephen Colbert. And I'm not going to play the video because I don't want to get my stream blocked or anything, but it's as terrible as you can imagine. It's him. Hey guys, Biden was sure looking spiky. Here's a funny joke that someone wrote for me. Just read the title of the video. I mean, Biden delivers a feisty, fiery, heated State of the Union speech. Stephen Colbert's live monologue. So I'm going to show you a breakdown of Biden's speech from someone who's actually someone with integrity, who isn't, sucking a corporate money teat. And I use teat because I didn't want to use another part of bodily anatomy that would be much dirtier. But watch your boy Tim Dillon here. Just take it away.
Drug. I think it's called the Lazarus drug. I think this is a drug that they put people on at the end when they're in it's stage 4, but they still have to be the president. Like, this is the final. This is what they've got. Make no mistake, what he is on is the best they can do. That guy at that podium is, you will not get that guy any other time. You might get it in a debate. Did you see when he was having ice cream talking about Israel and Gaza? You're not going to get that guy in the ice cream shop. You're not getting him in the Oval Office when he kind of doesn't know what's happening. You're getting him very, very rarely. That level of energy, that level of clarity. Except for, again, a few, because nothing's perfect. No drug is perfect. Let's take a look at this.
So he starts this by talking about what kind of drugs they must have had to inject Biden with to get him even to this point.
Not really.
Here he goes. Go to the pin. Go to the pin.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal.
Good. He says illegal.
That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
Good. He brings it back to him. How good was that? No, but that was good. I was shocked. I was on the couch going, who the
I love how Tim, he kind of facetiously impersonates the Stephen Colberts and the Seth Meyers of the world. How good was that? How good was that?
Is this? Lincoln Riley. And he's like, she was killed by an illegal. Everybody's like, okay. And then he's like,
by the way, he did an apology tour the next day for saying illegal. I mean, whatever.
And he brings it back to him. He's like, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself, and everyone has to quiet down. But then he's kind of, now watch. Can we watch a little more? Because now he kind of doesn't quite know where he is right after that moment. Right after that moment, he's a little confused. He's a little befuddled because, you interrupted his flow. He's been practicing this speech, every single day, and they interrupted him. Marjorie Taylor Greene interrupted his flow. And then he's like, so then the moment after that, he's a little all over the place. He's not, but I mean, I was shocked.
It's not about him. It's not about me. I'd be a winner Not really.
There it is.
I
See? There he goes. Where is he? Where is he? What do you get? Get the pin. Get the pin. Get the gavel. Morgan and Morgan.
Lincoln Riley.
That's right.
An innocent young woman who was killed.
They should always
Why,
have
and illegal.
things for him.
That's right.
They should
But how
always
many
have
thousands of people
visual
being killed by
aids
illegals?
and props for him,
To
by
her
the way.
parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself.
Pick something
I
else up.
understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border,
This is right.
people pay these smugglers $8,000
What
bucks
is
to
he
get
talking
across the
about?
border.
Keep going,
because
Pop.
they know if they get by.
Oh, boy.
If they get by.
Yep.
And let into the country.
We're there.
it's
We're
6
almost
to 8
there.
years before they have a hearing.
That's correct.
I
And
love
it's
also,
worth
by the
them
way,
taking the-
watch this Mike Johnson guy, his face as Biden trails off. I'm going to take it back just a little bit. Just like watch the look on that guy's face as Biden kind of like starts rambling incoherently.
Parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself.
Pick something
I
else up.
understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border,
This is right.
people pay these smugglers $8,000
Keep
bucks
going.
to get across the border.
Keep
The
going, Pop.
confused look that
If they
Mike
get
Johnson
by.
has on his
Oh,
face
boy.
right
If they
there.
get by
Yep.
and let
hilarious.
into the country.
We're there.
It's
We're
6
almost
to 8
there.
years before they have a hearing.
That's correct.
And it's worth it taking the chance of the $8,000.
Yeah, we're getting there.
What is he talking
Let's start
about?
to wrap it up.
If it's only 6 months, 6 weeks,
Yeah, whatever.
the idea is
Come
it's
on
highly
in.
unlikely that people will pay that
Come-
money
come
and
back to
come
us.
all that way.
That's
knowing
right.
That they'll be able to be kicked out.
That's
quickly.
right. Okay. So it's moments like that. You're on the edge of your seat going, where will it go?
So contrast that with this. You know, I didn't watch. I mean, I did watch the Colbert thing. He didn't show any of the clips of Biden fumbling or rambling because he's part of the crew. He's part of the reelect Biden crew. So he got his script, and it's just so sad to watch these people degenerate themselves like this by trying to sell us Joe Biden as like a viable option for president. Like, just anyone this election cycle who tries to sell me Joe Biden is forever just looked down upon as a complete joke of a person. And you know, I just showed you why. Like, the guy is incoherent. Trump, you know, say what you want about him. He's not that much younger than Biden, but he's coherent. The guy, like, you can watch one of his stupid rallies. He sits on stage and cracks jokes and improvises and talks like a human being for like 90 minutes at a time. Joe Biden cannot do that. They've been hiding him since he was running for president. They didn't even let him, like, they hid him in a closet the entire time. And they had that luxury because there was a pandemic going on, which, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that pipes up soon, or something's going to pipe up and we're all going to have to vote from home. There's already people saying, like, it's, you know, anyway, I don't want to get into all that. What I do want to get into, and just to seal this off, is people like Stephen Colbert and the Chicago Tribune and Time Magazine, all these idiots trying to sell us Joe Biden when 5 years ago they were telling us Bernie Sanders was too old to be president. They're morons. Moving on. Kurt Metzger recently did a Joe Rogan appearance, but I want to start this off by just showing a little bit about how stupid cancel culture is. So this is just a little bit from Jimmy Dore's show about Kurt.
To Kurt's manager who booked
This
him
is
at this
hilarious.
club in October.
He didn't know.
So this was an email sent from the club.
Mhm.
From this club, this is the email.
Okay.
After careful consideration and discussion with our team, investors, local comedians, and neighborhood advocacy groups. What? We've encountered a challenging situation that requires us to revisit the planned shows. Capitol Hill, that's the neighborhood and a comedy club, right? Is known for its progressive values. And we receive, and some of those progressive values turned out to be groupthink and censorship. Capitol Hill is known for its progressive values, and we've received significant feedback expressing concerns about the alignment of these upcoming shows with the neighborhood.
So the reason I want to talk about this is because this attitude, this like, we need to shut down people in comedy who say things that are offensive to us, has clearly carried over to everything, where it's like, now we can accuse you of hate speech and shut you down if someone feels offended. And we're going to go deep into this because there is a lot of it with the Israel thing. You can see this type of thing being weaponized, this like, well, I'm insulted, so that's violence against me type of bullshit.
Ethos.
Okay, Jimmy, let me just interject, because this is my favorite thing of this. I'm not at all mad at all. This is a gift. When I read this, I go, wait, isn't Capitol Hill where they set up the Chaz? Remember when their neighborhood ethos was they seceded from the Union?
Yes.
For the summer.
So this is in that neighborhood in Seattle where they tried to set up this anarchist kind of 4-block radius.
I didn't know it was back as part of America.
It was a total joke. They ended up killing a kid.
Yeah, it was a joke, except when they killed like 3 unarmed teens. Ironic. It was
Yes.
the most ironic city in the world, it's known as. And,
So let me finish reading this.
They have advocacy groups that weigh in on comedy bookings.
They have advocacy groups that weigh in on comedy booking.
So I don't necessarily agree with all the stuff Kurt's saying about the Chaz thing or whatever. Like, I don't know all the details of that, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of it was stupid and silly, but they're making great points about comedy in general. One of my favorite shows for the last year or so has been Kill Tony, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a live stand-up, like, kind of basically workshop where they pull names out of a hat and give people a chance to do comedy, and if they suck, they roast them. But if that was censored, or if like these types of people were involved and can be like, well, that hurt my feelings, that show would never be able to air. And it's crazy that this is the level we've gotten to in society where we allow this. It's like, if you don't like what someone's saying, it's real easy to turn it off. And the reason that this shit is being ramped up again is to convince people to support things like a TikTok ban. And I talk to people all over the city. I talked to a guy the other day who was a social media manager at a big company, and he supported a TikTok. He's like, well, I guess it's probably going to happen. He has no idea that the real reason behind them shutting down TikTok, he just thinks, oh, well, China, no, China's trying to get us. So
I'm going to venture to say they don't.
This feedback includes concerns from local advocacy groups that are deeply embedded in our demented mental community and work towards upholding its values.
Okay.
First of all, comedy is not about upholding any value except comedy. And what comedy is supposed to poke holes in the status quo and make people uncomfortable. That's the best form of comedy. That's Lenny Bruce. That's George Carlin. That's Bill Hicks. That's Sam Kinison. That's Don Rickles.
Boomers. Oh, you mean boomers? Jimmy, the comedy doesn't even figure in. Upholding its values, they shit on the sidewalk there.
I know.
You have, I mean, but the thing is, this
let's
all
finish
made up.
reading
Okay.
this. Mail sent from the club.
So there's another piece of this. But again, if you don't like something, it's very simple to turn it off. Like, when did liberals become the goddamn Christian right of the 1980s? The same type of people that were like, oh, that music is satanic. My son killed himself because he listened to heavy metal. No, your son killed himself because you're an incorrigible C word. I don't know if it's okay to say cunt on the air, but it should be. I just said it anyway. But again, it's like, now nothing about my political views, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but nothing about my political views has changed over the last 15 years. The Democrats have become a right-wing party. It's insane.
But the
So
thing
let's
is, this is all
finish
made up.
reading
Okay.
this. Given the feedback and to avoid any potential negative impact on both our club and the artists involved, as well as to maintain the harmony within our community, we believe the most responsible course of action is to not move forward with the shows for Dave Smith.
Well, I get it. He's a scumbag racist.
So
Dave Smith doesn't align.
Dave Smith.
Luis Gomez.
Dave Smith, who's the anti-war guy who just dismantled people about their support for the genocide in Gaza. That guy.
Well, I
Dave
bet you they're
Smith
not familiar.
has been
Well
on
as to
fire lately.
maintain the harmony within our community.
Doesn't align.
Dave
Dave Smith has been on fire lately. The way he dismantled Laura Loomer in that debate, Due Dissidents did a great piece on it, but he basically said, she's like, well, everyone in Gaza is guilty of Hamas's crimes, because they elected Hamas. And so Dave Smith goes like, the United States, would you agree that the United States has like killed a lot of innocent people in the Iraq war and Afghanistan? And Loomer is one of those kind of like libertarian type conservatives. And she's like, yeah, of course. So Dave Smith just comes back with this left hook and he's like, are we all guilty of those deaths? Should we be targets because our government kills a bunch of people in different countries? And man, she had nothing to say about that. But anyway, Dave Smith is a G.
Smith.
Luis Gomez.
Dave Smith, who's the anti-war guy who just dismantled people about their support for the genocide in Gaza. That guy.
Well, I bet you they're not familiar with that work. They're probably know.
Yeah,
him
and
from
that's a great point Jimmy's making there. This is obviously like a very left liberal leaning club. They're probably very like on the Israel issue. They're probably very, pro-Palestinian rights or whatever. And they're going to ban Dave Smith from their club because he's a conservative or he's a right winger. He's right wing.
Legion of Skanks podcast.
So then also Luis J. Gomez. Now, I'm not
I like Louis
totally
Gomez.
familiar with who he is.
Well,
Is-
I would say he's the ringleader of this group.
Okay. Okay.
Big J. Wait, where's Big J? Is
So
he
hang
not
on.
there?
So then
Oh, Jay wasn't even on it.
Jim Florentine,
I don't know why he got grouped in.
I don't understand. And it says, sadly,
Probably 'cause he had
Kurt
a show.
Yeah,
Metzger.
it was a deep cut. That's why I have sympathy for her because
This
she
di-
didn't want to do it.
This decision was not made lightly, and we want to ensure it does not reflect on your talent and the quality of your work, but it reflects on how mental we are at this comedy club and how mental our community is and how demented and ridiculous a comedy booker thinks that they have to consult outside advocacy groups to let her know how to book her own comedy club. Comedy clubs are not supposed to be a safe space.
Are you?
I want to be just like you. I figure all I need's a lobotomy and some tights.
Comedy
You're
clubs
gonna
are.
mansplain it now. Great.
I'm going to mansplain it.
Thanks. Oh, boomer mansplanation coming through.
People don't want to go to a comedy club and feel like they have the same ethos they do when they go to an office, when they go to work. They go to
You need to report to HR for that joke, sir.
comedy clubs to be free of that shit.
I know. You would think people that shit on the sidewalk would understand freedom.
So it keeps going. We will also ensure that any tickets sold are refunded promptly to our patrons, and we will communicate the decision to them with the sensitivity and respect. So
That's what I'm doing.
Any comedy club wrapped up in words like sensitivity and community values, and that's not a real comedy club. They're cosplaying comedy, and what they're doing is practicing groupthink. Because if you go outside their groupthink, no matter how funny you are, no matter the quality of your comedy, you will not be allowed there.
You know what you sound like right now? Jon Stewart supporting Trump.
We
with
will
his
also
jokes.
So I wanted to set this up with that clip just to show you that this whole mentality of like, oh, we're hurt, our feelings are hurt by you, so we're going to cancel you. It's over. And I think the biggest proof of that is Shane Gillis's recent return to Saturday Night Live. They fired him a few years ago. If you don't know the story, he got hired to Saturday Night Live and probably largely from the Gillian Keefe stuff he's been doing on the internet. He does a great Trump impression, all that stuff. But they fired him before he even really got to do anything on the show. And he's been so successful by his own merit that they brought him back as the host. So I'm going to show you this little bit from Joke World. And this guy did a great compilation of all the comedians responding to it. But when you have people like Dana Carvey and David Spade on board at this point, like, it's over. And just listen to this, because this guy on Chris DeStefano's
Starting off with Theo
up.
Von.
Unbelievable. Wow. Part of me wonders if at the last minute he's going to be like, hey, sorry, guys, it's just not for me. Kind of like they did to him, you know? It'll be interesting. But good for him, man. Congrats to Shane. He is so funny, man. I just think he's so funny.
Shane going back, being on the show that fired him, I'm going to call it now, and I'm not the first one to coin it, must-see TV.
Yeah, I mean, Norm went back.
Yeah, and again, it's like these guys, like Dana Carvey is arguably the comedy establishment, you know, like, and not that he's a bad person in any way. I mean, I love most of his work. But him and David Spade are like top of the food chain for like Hollywood comedy. And if they're saying this kind of stuff,
back when he got fired, and I thought that was interesting. But actually, Shane has blown up more than, I mean, Norm had done great after he left, but it was nothing like going from selling out clubs to selling out big theaters. Like, Shane is all around doing great, big money coming in, and big special. Someone called him the Taylor Swift for men, which is hysterical. Like, all guys like him. You know what I mean? He's like a guy's guy. He's big. He wears a t-shirt. He's just like a regular dude, and he just talks like dudes talk. But it's very clever.
Yeah, us as fellow comedians, you know, when you see Louis C.K. come up, or Norm or whatever, or David Spade, people who have a take on stuff you wouldn't think of. And Shane is the latest, greatest in that he's just doing it a little different than right before him.
Just a quick aside on Louis C.K. I love Louis C.K. And I think of all the people who got Me Too'd, he handled it better than anyone, because his response was, yeah, that's creepy. That's gross. I'm sorry. Have at it, you know? I can also kind of relate to his story, because as someone who was married, he was married at the time, so he didn't have sex with them. He like jerked off in the room with them or something. I'm like, maybe that's his way of like, you know, that's his cheat code, I guess. Like, because if you're a good guy, and I think that if you listen to the stuff Louis says deep down, he wouldn't cheat on his wife. So he kind of like, anyway.
It is his moment, and he's sneakily incredibly likable. He has, most comedians, I don't know if you have a laugh, but most comedians have a laugh that they do once in a while throughout their set. He just has a really charming one. Even if his bit is kind of edgy, he just wins you over. So I'm going to watch.
And his monologue, Shane, I mean, I don't even know what you say. I mean, it's so funny. I think I'm happy SNL took the hit and said, yeah, come back. You're too big of a star now. And it's actually sort of in the ether right now of that he's doing well. And that's the kind of host they want. And so what happened before, just take it.
How long did you, I'm sure he's going to do something change. And
so yeah, check this out. I'm going to jump up here. So listen to these guys. It's
one of those things where whether you like him, don't like, it's all irrelevant. It's not about that. It's like, subjectively, he's one of the funniest guys in our generation. Yeah. And it's really just about the kind of forgiving and forgetting of our society. That's what I like, is like, you know, now people are still trying to take him down with old resurfaced clips, and no, the world doesn't care anymore, because you realize, like, we got bigger fish to fry. That's a bullshit thing. Yeah. Comedy is a thing that is supposed to be not enjoyed by all, and usually the better comics will also simultaneously offend people. That's part of our job.
It's that way with any kind of art, I think, especially music, because there are phenomenal bands that I can't stand, but I can appreciate what they're doing music wise. And I think comedy is the same way. Art is subjective. You like what you like based on the way you were raised, or, you know, the influences in your own life. And so everything's not for everyone.
Beautiful thing to see the actual shift in
Listen to
public
this guy.
taste, right? Is like this, there was a huge outcry when he first gets hired. Sensitivity is flaring. Everybody's like, no, it becomes the biggest story. Now these exact same things come out and people are like, fuck you, dude, it's funny. They're
Right.
literally just batting it away. Like, you guys don't dictate this anymore.
Yeah.
You had your moment. We all went insane and listened to you.
Yeah.
And now we understand that you guys don't dictate taste. And if you are in charge, then nothing funny ever gets made.
That sums it up right there. And the whole Kurt Metzger thing is an example of, like Jimmy said at the opening of that segment, like this is a clear look at this club because they're not going to last much longer. You know, if you're a comedy club and you're doing that kind of stuff, like that is over. I mean, maybe it's going to work in your tiny little, you know, subculture or whatever for a little while. Maybe. Good luck to you. But it's ridiculous. And again, it's just insane to me that the left or the Democrats have become literally the Christian right of the 1980s. Like, there's Satan in that. And the conservatives are still that way too, to some degree. But I don't see the conservatives trying to censor things. And please show me examples if you would like, because I have the biggest one I've seen is they're trying to get trans books out of schools. Fine. Those books shouldn't be in schools. If you want to teach your kids about trans issues, teach them at home. Once they're 18, it's fair game. But it's just, this stuff has gotten so stupid. So to continue down this path, Kurt Metzger was recently on Rogan, and let's just basically, they're going to talk a little bit more about the cancel culture thing, and this is a really good piece of the conversation.
Don't go into Daddy's forbidden closet of mystery. Oh, okay. I won't.
So to set this up, he's talking about before I clip this, they were talking about how during COVID, everyone had to stay home and they were bored, so people started looking into things, doing their own research, and Kurt's kind of set this up by like, and then they were like, "Oh, don't do your own research. Like, don't go into Daddy's."
Such a Don't go into Daddy's forbidden closet of mystery. Oh, okay. I won't. Don't look into Hillary's email.
Yeah, that's a hilarious one, to infantilize people to the point where you're telling them, don't research things.
Yeah.
We'll handle that. We're the professionals. Meanwhile, we lie all the time.
They're doing.
And so the point of me kind of showing this in succession with that last clip is that this cancel culture mentality, this like, well, I don't like this, so it's bad, is part of the news culture now. It's massively part of the news culture. It's so mind-blowing to me how many people still believe complete bullshit, like that Trump was a secret Russian or that January 6th was an insurrection. That blows me away that people still buy that shit. Look, I've said it thousands of times. If people committed crimes on January 6th, like if they vandalized offices or they broke into places they weren't supposed to be, fine. They deserve to be arrested. They deserve to be tried. They deserve to be, have consequences for breaking the law. But there is video. You want to talk about cherry picking video? There's video of cops letting protesters in the building that they specifically avoided showing during the January 6th show trial. A lot of the testimony was hearsay from people, and people still believe it. So listen, they kind of break down this a little bit. They show this whole New York Times thing, and this is why I wanted you to see this, because again, this like, oh, we don't like what you're saying. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. If we don't like it, we're going to make sure you're not allowed to say it in our little, bubble.
To us what they did to Haiti. And the shit we do to other countries, they're going to do to you. So the shit we did to Haiti, which is never let them have their own leaders and coup them when they had one elected one.
So just sorry to keep interrupting this, but what he's saying here is so relevant, because what they do in other countries, they do to you. There is I did a video on this last year, but they basically passed this thing called the Smith Modernization Act. And what that did was allow the US government to use the propaganda tools and techniques that it uses in other countries here in the United States. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is look around. we'll get into this later. The neocons and the Democrats are on the same page, and they're trying to shut down anyone who opposes, just like in the Iraq era. But the Democrats are so propagandized now on issues like Ukraine and Israel and you name it, January 6th, that they're believing neocon shit. They have turned into the people that I was against during the Iraq War era. Just like slowly been churned into that with using Trump as the cudgel,
That's us now. Now that's us. We're going to pass a law so you can't vote for the guy you want. Why is he even being allowed to run at all if it's such a fascism is coming? I don't even understand the messages are so mixed. And the only way to believe them is to be highly frightened all the time.
New York Times.
Yes. And the COVID thing just really put that into high gear, didn't it? I was just arguing with someone on Twitter the other day, probably like a 3M manufacturing robot or something, about how ridiculous it is to still be wearing masks. And I mean, hate me if you want. I don't care if you wear a mask, do it. I just think you're ridiculous at this point because it's clear that it did nothing. Even the vaccine, I'm not going to get into that because it's safe and effective, YouTube. But let's keep watching.
Has just started doing this new thing on Instagram where they take the actual writers and they have the writers talk about the issues.
I'm leaving.
And when you see they don't understand what they're doing. This is exactly who we thought was writing these things. It's like this very effeminate guy and this woman that it's like the kind of woman that seems like
you
she
should have
would
never done this. Yeah.
do at a party, like talk down to you. And
yeah, the dude from the New York Times that they're about to show looks like one of those like snotty fucking trust fund kids that you'd meet at some high class party and who would be like, oh, you like Trump? You're a terrible person. What's wrong with you? You don't even know.
It's
just who you thought.
Yeah, exactly. The type of people that would, these ultra liberal, out of touch people.
Yeah.
And these people are talking about, one of the guys was talking about Donald Trump's words being taken out of context.
And again, I hate having to say this because I've always considered myself a liberal, always. But the liberals are the dumb ones now. I did a tweet the other day that was like about MSNBC, and I said something to the effect of, once Trump popped up, MSNBC turned to Fox News and said, "Oh, you want to see cultish partisan hackery? Hold my beer," because Trump turned the liberals into that. And now they're supporting the Cheneys. Like the Democratic Party and Dick Cheney are on the same page together against Trump. That tells you a lot.
Context that it would be a bloodbath because he was talking about the auto industry and the economy. And then this guy starts bringing up other episodes of violent rhetoric. It's hilarious. But you gotta watch this. Look, give me some blood. Give me some
God.
blood.
Well, what I guessed.
Seized on those comments and said they were an example of him calling for political violence or predicting violent actions if he didn't win in November. His supporters said that those comments were taken out of context.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
Trump has a history of using violent rhetoric dating back to his 2016 campaign. That language took on new significance after the January 6th attack on the Capitol in 2021. And throughout his third campaign for president, he's been getting...
Again, who had guns? I read a NPR piece that was like, oh, all these people had weapons. Like, okay, it did exactly what this guy did. Who's been charged? Who's been legitimately charged with weapons at January 6th? Like almost no one, maybe a couple random people, but they try to make it seem like it's an insurrection. And the NPR article, I should have clipped it, but it goes into, I'll do a piece on this on Rumble eventually, but this goes in this NPR article. I'll have to read it to you, but the way it's framed, they quote people from like NGOs. They're like, so-and-so from the Americans for Safety and Security says that there were several people who had weapons and they were very violent. It's like they don't cite any hard evidence. They cite these like flowery, kind of vague statements from NGOs, like these government organizations that are like CIA cutouts.
Getting a lot of attention for the way he talks about violence and retribution on the trail. He suggested that
See? So this is the New York Times.
It's all
Kurt's laugh always corrects me.
This is these hard-nosed reporters with the cup of coffee that are like fucking chasing down Lees, and they're pulling their hair out, and they're meeting people in back alleyways. This is Woodward and Bernstein.
Do people think that's
this is Watergate?
Like
No, but I mean they're essentially like ultra hard left activists that are masquerading.
I mean, Joe is being facetious. Like, these are supposed to be journalists.
As journalists, and everything has their opinion on it.
They're
Every front page article.
Yeah, they're also masquerading as activists. They're bourgeois twits. Yeah. They have a lifestyle brand, which is I'm a Sex in the City guy or gal, and I work in the paper. They do the same.
That's exactly what I was saying earlier. It's like these snotty, like, oh, I'm a sophisticated person who works for the New York Times.
Very cosmopolitan.
Same amount of work as when you see those a day in the life of Google. First, I go to the chair.
It's Twitter. Yeah, that video.
Whatever.
That video is amazing.
Yeah, and they don't even make that. Well, New York Times, that's the big time. So all the plum jobs, like it's kind of similar to when people were mad that Seinfeld. They were like demanding why riding in to get coffee with Seinfeld in cars isn't diverse enough.
Yeah.
And he goes, because and Seinfeld, every time they bring these things up to him, I love his fucking response to that. But at a place like the New York Times, they have to go, oh, we need to bring these. So all like, how exactly you put it, you could guess what they look like. All of them have moved up from like the Gamergate, which at the time I was an adult and I was like, I don't care about this. But we're moving up in the world of media. Because where's the money coming from? You got to hope you do well enough at making little smear articles on a shitty video game website to get picked for the big leagues, and some people did.
Yeah.
And they've been moving up, and then like me, I'm, oh my God, 20 years have passed, and then I see like, that's that little twerp, like if the one that got Shane fired actually went somewhere in life.
Why don't you go back to your home on Whore Island?
If I find, like, there's people like him that work with the DHS about the terrorism of, saying whatever the fuck this idiot's referring to.
Well, yeah, they've become embedded in the intelligence community.
Well, it's all a thing of like your career, right? If you want your career, you can either say the truth about a thing, or you can worry. Oh, you must not want to have a good career.
Yeah.
Oh, your career. All people have to do is not be a punk to their career. I'm not saying careers don't matter. I'm saying, I will never be a bitch to a fucking career. Like, who would do that?
Yeah, but
I'll tell you who would do that. People who work at the New York Times. Anyway, that was just that whole interview is fantastic. And if you haven't watched it and you're a fan of Jimmy and Kurt, it's well worth the investment, because not only do they talk about that kind of stuff, but Kurt completely schools Joe on a bunch of stuff, from the Ukraine war to a couple other things that escape me at the moment. But it's, like I said, it's well worth the watch if you've got the time for it. So moving on. Speaking of canceling people, this is our theme today. So let me just give you like this personal, deeply personal story about my life. I'm 45 and I haven't had healthcare for probably I haven't had it now I had it for about 2 years, from like 2021 to like end of 2023. But I've been without healthcare for a long time. So in a lot of ways, I see this as a good thing, because I look at my friends who have had healthcare and they're all strung out on pills and have had multiple surgeries now. I met this woman on a dating app a couple months ago, and we started talking, and she's like, yeah, I'm not in good shape. I just have my gallbladder out. And I was just like, you had your gallbladder out? And so we got to talking, and she's basically kind of telling me she had an attack and she went in and all this stuff. Well, I've been watching, since I don't have healthcare, I watch a lot of videos about health, and I've actually been able to heal myself on multiple occasions through just like doing the research and finding, the right fix. Because a lot of times when you have a health problem, it's related to something you're doing, a behavior that you have. And so what I learned was, so just to give you this, sorry to go into so much detail, but I think this is an interesting way to set this up. So to give you a clear-cut example of this, when I first got divorced, I was dating, and I started getting this rash around my eye. I was like, what is going on? Like, I'd get these little outbreaks of like just like red kind of lesions around my eye. So I go to this, my original doctor had retired, and he was an old school guy. He was a good dude, but I ended up going to this doctor, and she's like, oh, I don't know whether to send you. I need to send you to a specialist, but I don't know whether I should send you to an eye doctor or a dermatologist. And I'm like, bitch, a dermatologist, clearly. It's around my eye, not in it. So right off the bat, the medical professional scared me. But she prescribed me a steroid cream. And she was like, if it doesn't go away permanently after a while, come back and see me. I used this friggin' steroid cream for like 2 or 3 years. And every once in a while, the lesions would come back, and I'd put the cream on and they go away. Finally, I got to this point where I was like, I got to figure out what's causing this. So I start Googling around, and I found pictures of it. And I go to a forum, and there's a doctor, and he's like, oh, you have this? Here's what you need to do. This is a very common like outbreak that happens mostly with women who wear makeup. So because I was dating, I was like, close to women. Makeup was getting my face dirt, just dirt in general. It wasn't just makeup, but he's like, all you need to do is get, a scrubbing towel and some Cetaphil, and just make sure you scrub your face every day, and that'll stop it. Guess what? I did that, and the problem went away. No pharmaceuticals necessary, no specialist visits, none of that stuff. And that got my gears turning. And so since then, I talk a lot about Dr. Berg, Dr. Eric Berg. He's a chiropractor with a YouTube channel. Dr. Sten Ecker is another one that I watch. These guys have great breakdowns. The thing I love the most about Dr. Berg is you can Google like Dr. Berg acne, and you'll find a video. And Dr. Berg will go into the weeds and be like, oh, you got bad acne? Well, here's what's causing your acne. You're eating too many carbs. And then if you get the stuff and scrub it, then it just gets worse because you're like breaking the skin and everything. He's like, you need to stop eating carbs. I sent my son this video a couple years ago. He hasn't had acne since, so it's like, I just realized that I was able to heal myself much easier by doing the research on YouTube than I was by spending thousands and thousands of dollars and having co-pays and bullshit with American fucking scam care. And as a result, I'm much healthier than a lot of my friends. I have a good friend. He's had like 4 surgeries now. He's on God knows how many pills. He's, I think, a year younger than me. And the guy is like almost incapacitated. And, I keep telling him he needs to exercise, but he's not going to listen to me. He's just going to keep stuffing his face with pizza and beer and taking pharmaceuticals. But the reason I'm going into all this is there's a pretty famous doctor named Andrew Huberman, and he's grown quite an audience. And now he's being smeared by the press for personal matters, not because he said anything wrong or he advised people differently. And just to kind of like backtrack a little bit, Jimmy did a piece the other day about how intermittent fasting causes heart attacks now. And it's a complete joke of a headline, because once you go into the weeds on the data, it's based on a study that like was done like 20 years ago. It has no peer review. It's not even published. It's an abstract. And so it's clear that like the American Heart Association is like, the pharma companies that own them were like, hey, we're seeing like a little bit of drop in sales. Can you do something about this intermittent fasting thing? And this is the kind of stuff that happens when they do that. So Glenn Greenwald did a great breakdown on this, and just listen to what Glenn has to say.
perfect example of somebody who hasn't worked for a media corporation in many years. He worked for NBC News 25 years ago as the host of a reality TV show for a couple of years, but by and large, Joe Rogan built up his entire massive audience outside of the structure and framework and therefore the rules of corporate media. And that's the reason corporate media hates them so much. Andrew Huberman is somebody who has done the same. He's a neuroscientist. A few years ago, I think in 2019, 2020, he started a podcast. And like so many people during the pandemic, when people couldn't go out, they were online all the time. He found a massive audience. Talks a lot about neuroscience, but about self-help. I have to confess, I've never listened to his program before. I'm not very well aware of him. I don't have a strong opinion about him one way or the other. I've seen his name around. I knew he had a popular podcast, but I'm not here to defend Andrew Huberman because I don't really know much about him. What I saw, though, was a bunch of media people today promoting a story, a cover story, that is on New York Magazine. His face appears on New York Magazine. And here you see it on the screen, Andrew Huberman's Mechanisms of Control, the private and public seductions of the world's biggest pop neuroscientist. And it's written by a New York Magazine journalist named Carrie Hawley. And I saw a bunch of media people talking about this like it was some big Me Too scandal, like there was a bunch of shameful, dirty secrets and Andrew Huberman's dating life that had been exposed by this article. I saw people congratulating her. And I assumed that there were a bunch of stories similar to a report of the kind that they did on Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports, who they obviously hate as well, where they tried to Me Too him in a way that I think turned out to be very factually dubious at best. But I assumed it was that kind of an article by the way people were talking about it. Oh, he's been exposed. He's a very abusive person. And I began reading through this article expecting to find that, because there's a lot of people in the media talking about it. I assumed there was something really dark and sinister here. And the more I began reading it, I kept reading it. It went on and on and on and on.
So this is exactly what they do to everybody. They're doing it to, they did it to Russell Brand. They're doing it to Trump at an insane level, but
on and on. It was this endless article, and it was basically nothing other than reporting on his adult dating life. He's a 48-year-old man. He is very focused on fitness. He's very big. He's very muscular, conventionally handsome. A lot of women find him handsome. That's part of his appeal. It's the reason why a lot of people.
And he gives people health advice. One of the things he advises is exercise and intermittent fasting, which, as we've just learned, causes heart attacks.
Listen to him. And he's unmarried. He's a bachelor. He's wealthy. He's a neuroscientist. He has a lot of charisma. That's why people watch him. And so, as you can imagine him, he dates a lot of women. And this article didn't do it tried to destroy his reputation. You can see here it's framed his mechanisms of control. So you assume it's some kind of like.
I just want to say, I have so much respect and love for Glenn Greenwald because he's just clearly such a down the middle journalist. You know, he just speaks truth to power. And in this case, the power is the media trying to smear Huberman. But it doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans distorting things, Glenn goes after him. He's a real journalist, one of the very few left. Like, you can always trust him to give you an honest view. And I love Glenn.
Article about his abuse with women, his misogynistic network of women that he's manipulated and abused non-consensually. That's what you're expecting. And you're reading it and you're reading it. And it's just basically nothing other than I
have a few heroes that are gay men. One is Rob Halford of Judas Priest. And Glenn Greenwald's definitely another one.
Report interviewing women that is dating and still has dated. And I guess the worst thing that they found out about him was.
Don't get mad that I didn't say Shakespeare.
That he was dating women who didn't realize he had other girlfriends at the same time. He wasn't married to any of them. And that's it. I mean, there's nothing in this article.
So this is, again, it's one of those like, he hurt my feelings. I'm going to go to the news about it. And Glenn goes into the weeds a little bit. So
That's
I'll
even
let you
journalistically justified
see
to
what
publish,
the-
let alone something
what the nitty gritty dirt of these
that's
accusations
scandalous.
is.
I was actually going to go through it, and I'm actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even want to give it that level of attention. I guess one of the things that it alleges to try and justify itself is that there was a woman he was dating who had.
I also love Glenn's just disdain, like to justify itself. Like that's one of the things this article tries to do to justify itself.
Unprotected sex with him, and she says it was because she assumed they were monogamous when in fact he was dating somebody else, which I guess means that the minute you become a public figure at this point, not even if you hold public office, he's not a senator, he's not a cabinet official, he's not somebody who wields public power, he's a podcast host. But he's not even married, so it's not even adultery. I mean, I guess the worst thing you can say about him is that he dated a woman and was dating a different woman without one of the women knowing.
So you have to ask yourself, like I had to ask myself, why are they targeting this guy of all the people? And then it just makes you question like Andrew Tate and Russell Brand and all these other people that have just been maliciously. Jordan Peterson is another one. I saw someone on Twitter the other day talking about, and Jordan Peterson has some dumb takes. Like his take on climate change on Joe Rogan right out of the gate was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But his book, 12 Rules for Life, is a great book. And it's like teaching you things that are really helpful for your life. Like it's good for people. You know, I don't think that Jordan Peterson is the malicious white supremacist Nazi that he was made out to be by saying like women have vaginas or whatever he said that pissed everyone off. But with Huberman, I had to ask myself, like, why are they writing this piece? Because there's a reason. Did he do so? Like, what did he do to generate the ire of New York Magazine? Well, Glenn set it up, and I set it up with my explanation of the healthcare industry. And listen, I don't want anyone to think that I have any disrespect for doctors or healthcare professionals or people that. There are plenty of people in the healthcare industry that are doing the right thing and they're trying to like help people and don't misconstrue what I'm saying as hatred for those people. What I hate is our system and the fact that it's not built to make people feel better. It's built to make people money, and not a lot of people like. And I mean, this carries over to every problem we have in our society. But I'll let you see the rest of the details of Andrew Huberman's disgusting crimes here.
And if this is the stuff of cover stories now, then I guess it means that it's fair game to go around following every single journalist and tracking their private lives and seeing who they're working with. I guess I should read some of this since I'm commenting on it, just to give you a sense for how filthy and baseless this entire article is, to try and ruin the reputation of somebody whose crime is that they have developed a much bigger audience than anybody at New York Magazine possibly could, and has done so on their own. Quote, Sarah's relationship with Andrew began in February 2018 in the Bay Area where they both live. Sarah was willing to have unprotected sex because she believed they were monogamous. Through a spokesman, Huberman says he did not become exclusive with Sarah until late 2021, that he was not doted on, that
he was not doted on? What does that mean? Like she didn't send me a Valentine.
Between him and Sarah were shared based on mutual agreement and proficiency, and that their Thanksgiving plans were tentative, and that he maintains a very busy schedule and shows up to the vast majority of his commitments. And that was because she had complained that sometimes he didn't show up for things, that he put more burden on her in the relationship than I guess he was willing to take, like the most banal, conventional, trivial, standard complaints in a relationship that they decided to air.
It's too bad Jerry Springer isn't still a thing, because she could have took him on there, or like Jenny Jones, or one of those old like 90s daytime talk shows.
The relationship struck Sarah's friends as odd. At one point, Sarah said, quote,
but that's the level of journalism we're getting from New York Magazine these days. And we already talked about the New York Times. Don't even.
I just want to be with my kids and cook for my man. I was like, who says that, says a close friend. I mean, I've known her for 30 years. She's a powerful, decisive, strong woman. We grew up in this very feminist community. That's not a thing either of us would ever say.
Why is that a bad thing? I mean, I could say that when I had a girlfriend, like, oh, I just want to hang out at home and cook with my girlfriend and watch TV. It was like, there's nothing wrong with that.
In August 2021, Sarah says she read Andrew's journal and discovered a reference to cheating. She said, quote, gutted. In 2021, she tested positive for a high-risk form of HPV, one of the variants linked to cervical cancer. Quote, I have never tested positive, she said, and had been tested regularly for 10 years. A spokesman for Huberman says he has never tested positive for HPV. According to the CDC, there is currently no approved test for HPV in men. When she brought it up, she says, he told her you could contract HPV from many things. Sarah said she grabbed Andrew's phone when he had left it in the bathroom, checked his texts, and found conversations with someone we will call Eve. Some of them took place during the camping trip they had just taken. Caught having an affair, Andrew was apologetic. We pretty much picked the worst parts of this entire...
So there you go. Why are they smearing Andrew Huberman? Why is that a thing? It's really odd that, it's not odd. Glenn pretty much summed it up. These people are jealous. They can't do what he's doing. He's found a way around the mainstream. And that's another reason that they want to get rid of TikTok and get rid of, tamp down on Facebook and YouTube. Because so they can continue to control the narrative on everything, whether it's health, whether it's war, whether it's the economy. You see these people out there trying to gaslight you that the economy is actually good. Like who believes that? Anyway, shout out to the Rumble crew. There's actually a few people watching on Rumble. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to start catering a lot more to Rumble because YouTube has not been kind to me. Like I have these videos, like sometimes my videos will like break through the algorithm, and like I had one I did with Bill Maher a couple weeks ago that got like over 1,000 views pretty quick, and then the rest of them they're just like, I did something about Assange, it got like five views. I did this thing about the sad trajectory of Bernie Sanders that should be like at least as many views as the Bill Maher thing, and I can just see, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like there's some shenanigans going on. Anyway, I got some more good stuff for you. This might be a little bit of a longer stream today, so don't hate. But we're going to talk about your boy, Jon Stewart. And wow, I was just talking a little bit about how the landscape has changed. And Glenn, I cut it out, but Glenn at the beginning of that piece kind of talks about the nature of fame in the 2020s and how, someone like Andrew Huberman is pretty famous, but like a lot of people have no idea who he is, but he has like millions of followers, and that is the nature of fame now. And I think that people like Jon Stewart, Dave Smith said it best. He's trying to fit a 2006 size peg into a 2024 sized hole, and it's just not working for him. But let's watch. So basically, I just want to show this breakdown Dave Smith did of Jon Stewart's kind of attack on Tucker Carlson, because it was totally disingenuous and not based in any kind of fact. But I did a piece on that already. This is more about the current attack that Jon is doing on Donald Trump. And Tim Pool actually pointed out how ridiculous it is the other day, because he dug up a little factoid about Jon selling his New York penthouse for like $17 million. And you could apply the same kind of logic to him if you wanted to get him into court for overvaluing his property is the point Tim was making. But the press tried to misconstrue it as he's accusing Jon Stewart of fraud. He's actually not doing that. He's actually just trying to show you that how disingenuous the case against Trump is. But let's go back a little bit and watch this bit with Dave Smith.
You're a product of your time. We all are. But there's something about Jon Stewart. Like, look, the point I'm making in regards to Jon Stewart is that this whole, like, you can't hear from the other side because there's a war. This is all the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
This isn't old. A few months back, it had been published up there since.
Okay, I keep
a few months. What is that? This whole like you can't hear from.
So this whole you can't hear from the other side because there's a war. He said it just started 5 minutes ago. No, it's actually a throwback to the Iraq War era. That's what the neocons did. If you're not with us, you're with the terrorists. If you're not with Ukraine, you support Putin. The same thing because it's the same people.
From the other side because there's a war. This is all the last 5 minutes. This isn't old. You remember how the Guardian scrubbed Osama bin Laden's letter to America a few months back?
Oh, that's because it was turning on all the Gen Zers.
Right.
To go out to Afghanistan and find themselves.
I remember this very well. Just to summarize what that letter said, Osama bin Laden was like, we know that if we just like bomb a place, America will come with all its military resources. And our plan is to drain them of their wealth and get them caught up in a bunch of endless wars until they collapse on themselves. Interesting, isn't it?
Some husbands.
Yeah, right. But what the point is, they just scrubbed it last year, late last year. But it had been published up there since 2002, I think. It was maybe even 2001. I think maybe 2002. But it had been up on the Guardian because that was the way news was always done back then. It was like, oh, we're at war with this guy. Here's what he says. There's an interview that was just going viral the other day, an interview with Saddam Hussein as American troops were amassing, about to invade the country. I think it was like a week and a half before the war kicked off. Like it had already been said that we're invading. We're coming here to invade you. And yeah, journalists sit down with microphones and talk to him. And like that's always the way it's been done. And so to sit here and act like this is some crazy thing to think that, and by the way, we're not technically, I mean, according to that, we're not at war with Russia. Right? I mean, we're backing the other side of the war, but there's nothing, it makes no sense by any of the reasonable standards that we all had up until 5 minutes ago to be like, oh, the American people shouldn't hear Putin's side of the story. All right, let's keep.
Yeah, again. But he brought up the point they actually interviewed Saddam Hussein. So it wasn't even that bad during the Iraq War.
Just out of curiosity, as a student, when you're sitting there interviewing Putin and you don't plan to challenge his utter bullshit, but you don't want to really be that obvious, what do you do with your face? Oh, I see. Okay, so it's not really a straight face as much as you try to convey a mixture of what appears to be shame, arousal, and I'm going to say irregularity. For instance,
so funny.
Like you're constipated while jerking off to a Sears catalog. Been there, haven't you? The guy up there saying like, well, the lingerie ads were
funny and all, but I'm just going to take a quick aside because Jon Stewart acts like Tucker didn't challenge Putin, but he actually did. Work. And I'm going to show you a clip of it right now.
Someone who's very famous in the United States, probably not here, Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter. He's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year. This is a huge story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly, without getting into the details of it or your version of what happened, if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
Shut up, Jon
ambiguity in what Putin says. But what if Putin starts saying shit like World War II was Poland's fault because they forced Hitler to invade them? I mean, what do you do with something like that? That's going to be hard.
After World War I, this territory was transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig, a city of Dansk emerged. Hitler asked them to give it amicably, but they refused.
Of course.
Got him.
Just pause it for a second. Like, it's amazing how much people rely on the ignorance of their audience. Because,
again, going back to the infantilization thing, Stewart knows no one in his audience watched the Tucker Carlson interview, because if they did, they would know he was lying about how he's painting it. And that's why he has to have a canned laugh track.
Everything Putin just said there is a fact. It's just a historical fact. And it's not, Putin didn't say, assuming his translators tell him you know what I mean? Like, Putin didn't say that's why Germany was forced to invade, or that's why Poland was in the wrong for not giving Danzig back. But it's just a fact that after World War I, Poland took control of this city that had historically been German, and that Hitler wanted it back, and they wouldn't give it. And then he invaded.
Stupid ass boy. Hey,
So
look.
when Tucker Carlson says, of course, he's going, yeah, of course that happened. Like, there's nothing controversial about the statement. It literally be like, it's on the level of like, Japan bombed the United States of America, attacked the United States of America at Pearl Harbor, and then America declared war. There's no moral, like, I'm not even saying like Japan was right or wrong, or America was right or wrong. It's just, there's nothing to debate about there. All of that happened. It's just very bizarre. So far, this entire thing, it's like Jon Stewart he's not making any points. He's not making any jokes that make a point. He's made fun of Tucker's face and did an okay job, I guess. And then he's making fun of the fact that he's interviewing Putin, which is just insane. So, like, okay, where's the like smart commentary that he's supposed to have with these jokes? I just don't this isn't political humor. This is just stupid. All right,
let's bring in Keith Olbermann. Keith, what do you think about it?
Now, I'll confess that I have licked Joe Biden's dick all the way through since 1975.
Very insightful commentary there from Mr. Keith Olbermann. Let's keep going at it here. And in this next clip, I want to show you again what I talked about with Tim Pool, but Tim Pool kind of exposed how disingenuous Jon Stewart is being on the whole Trump, real estate thing. And Tim Dillon actually did a great bit about how he's like, how it started and how it is now. Like, basically, originally Trump was like a secret Russian spy and an insurgent of America. And now it's like, he lied about the value of his real estate. So Tim Pool on an episode a couple nights ago, was making fun of Jon Stewart's disingenuous diatribe about Trump, and then went, I did a quick Google, Jon Stewart selling something, and he sold his penthouse back in 2014 in Manhattan. So Tim starts looking at the tax, basically the tax assessed value of these properties in the same area on Zillow. And what he finds is that there are properties in this part of New York that are valued at like millions of dollars, like $13-14 million. And the tax assessment is like $500,000, which is interesting because Jon Stewart's whole premise is he's mad at Kevin O'Leary for saying that like this is going to scare business away from New York. But it's clear from what Tim Pool was looking into that people are in these multi-million-dollar penthouses are paying way less taxes on their property than they should be. And maybe that's a New York law. Like, I don't know what the deal is on that. But if you go to Zillow and like Tim did and look at these properties, the actual selling value versus the tax assessed value is way, way more. So it's kind of like just proving Tim's point that, or Kevin O'Leary's point that like, if you do this to Trump, it's going to scare all the business out of New York because everyone is doing this. So listen to what Tim Pool has to say about it.
About falsifying documents and not about whether Trump committed fraud. It was a separate thing. So what we have here is, let's separate the underlying fraud case. What we have here is Jon Stewart being wrong, saying on TV, and let me pull the quote again from the Blaze so I can show you. Going back up, Stewart suggested the banks were victimized. And let's see, here we go. Letitia James knew that Trump's property values were inflated because when it came time to pay taxes, Trump undervalued the very same properties. False. Trump didn't value tax assessment. The city did. That's the point I made initially. What happens then is Jon Stewart deflects with this nonsensical statement, and then leftist media comes out and claims,
I love how like everyone that's against Tim Pool is a leftist. Like that's his whole thing. It's hilarious.
I'm literally accusing Jon Stewart of fraud, when what I'm really doing is mocking him for his false statement.
The modern Democratic Party is not on the left. I mean, I say that every day 1,000 times, but I apparently have to keep saying it because they're not.
Now, here's the problem. The people who read Mediaite are going to make the assumption I was literally accusing Jon Stewart of fraud. The point is, what Trump did and what Jon Stewart did, neither of which is fraud and are different. Jon Stewart claimed Trump evaluated his own taxes. Now I've got people tweeting, being like, Tim Pool doesn't realize the government evaluates the taxes, not Jon Stewart. And I'm like, duh. Jon Stewart didn't realize.
Also, the banks that give these loans out do their own research. They do due diligence. They check on your numbers.
That. That's the whole point.
And the bank actually testified they made money on the deal. That's the best part. There's no victim in this crime. It's clearly just a like, hey, we got to get Trump for something.
Point.
And Jon Stewart buys it all. When asked for comment about Jon Stewart's return to The Daily Show, he had this to say.
I've not yet begun to defile myself.
So for those of you that actually watch my show and saw my actual breakdown of what this was, you know the truth. There may or may not be something underlying the Trump fraud case. Sure, I certainly think there isn't based on what we're seeing. And I made that argument for it ad nauseum. But what we're seeing here is the media breakdown for political power. This woman from the Sarah Rumpelman from Mediaite writes the opinion piece without actually even looking into anything I've said about Jon Stewart, for which she might go, oh, that's what he meant. And here we are. Now, because the internet and Poe's law, and oh, don't get me wrong, I totally understand this. I tweet silly, nonsensical things all the time. But I think it's fair to point out, I quite literally did not accuse him of committing fraud. I said, did he commit fraud when he told his penthouse? He listed it for this, but it was valued at this. Who did he defraud? I am shocked. And this is immediately following.
He's just pointing out the hypocrisy. That's it. He's not accusing anyone of anything.
Jon Stewart's show where he claimed they knew Trump committed fraud because he undervalued when it came time to pay taxes. There you go. Have fun, Jon Stewart. I'm sure you'll write something up for your show on Monday and you'll get it grievously wrong. But I hope this was informative for all of you. Thanks for hanging out. Next segment will be at 4 p.m.
All right. I think what I'm going to do now is something that I haven't done at all lately, but I believe in hegemony to some degree. And I see Jimmy and Do Dissidents doing this. And my next piece is about some stuff that I think YouTube might kick me off. So I am going to shut off the YouTube stream and move over to Rumble. And just so y'all have the address for my Rumble page, I'm going to throw that up on the screen right now. It's very easy. It's just rumble.com/politics. There you go. And I'm going to go to a quick break, and I'm going to come back and do two more stories on Rumble. One is about Mike Benz, who's been on top of a lot of stuff involving CIA and deep state. The other one is about Susan Sarandon, a great speech she gave at a pro-Palestine rally recently. So, like I said, I'm going to go quickly to a card, and come join us over at Rumble. It's right here on the screen, rumble.com/politics. We got a lot more people in the stream over there anyway. You know, it's not a ton. I'm not doing Do Dissidents or Jimmy numbers yet, but it's that time. I mean, I see my audience growing there a lot bigger, and they're a lot less anal about what I can and can't say, and I love that. And so we'll see you over on Rumble in just a minute for the end of the show.